tried to write an intro for this several times, but there's not really a thesis or a solid point. I just have a bunch of questions and a few observations regarding the character of the Riddler in 2022's The Batman. Okay, so starting off, what exactly is the Riddler's skill set? What is he capable and not capable of? Late in the movie, he claims that he thought he was working with Batman to bring Falcone into the light, but how exactly did he think he was using Batman? He says, "I never could have gotten him out of there. I'm not physical. My strength is up here," points to his head. But this just isn't true. He's basically a ninja. He sneaks into three people's personal space and murders them, Mitchell, Savage, and Coulson. And later he shoots Falcone, which requires at least some skill with firearms. Also, Riddler had a clear shot from across the street, and we're supposed to believe that at no point was he able to get access to a very public figure like Falcone, and that he needed Batman to specifically escort him out the front entrance. But Batman doesn't even really do that much in the scene. Earlier, Selina runs off and Gordon says, "If she kills Falcone, we may never find the Riddler." But why not? Things start to fall apart on this plot point. It has no real foundation. Riddler could just kill Falcone himself at any point. Falcone doesn't know anything about the Riddler, so this isn't at all relevant to solving a mystery. Yeah, Batman and Gordon are trying to catch a killer, and Bruce himself is curious about what Falcone knows about his family, but why is the Riddler specifically wanting Batman to jump through these hoops? Because he's insane? Alright, fine. But there needs to be some through line. Is Riddler directing Batman towards a confrontation with Falcone in order to have family secrets divulged? Why? Riddler already knows this information. Why does he need Falcone to personally deliver this revelation to Batman? Maybe if the Riddler knows Batman's identity, and I think he does, then perhaps you could say that he's just killing two birds with one stone, eliminating Falcone while also toying with Batman? Again, question mark. At no point does Batman make any real discoveries in the investigation that would put him a step ahead of the Riddler. He receives cryptic messages and plays scavenger hunt for the first 2/3 of the film. The mystery is there mostly to guide Batman and the audience by proxy along an escalation of Gotham's structural and institutional problems. The movie starts at street-level crime, goes to corrupt officials, then the organized crime pulling the strings, and then the supposed corruption of the powerful families at the top. That's good, but it's just kind of a neither here nor there situation. On one hand, the movie is presenting Batman as waiting for the Riddler to slip up so that he can crack the case and stop him, like every other crime thriller, but also wants to be about the Riddler airing all this dirty laundry, trying to teach the elite, Bruce Wayne specifically, a lesson. But then it just ends up being truncated and moot anyway because Riddler hands himself over and lets the indiscriminate killing begin. His ultimate target seems to be Bruce Wayne, I think, or at least should be, but then he just kind of gives up trying to kill him in order to go through with his big terrorist act. Did he run out of time? Does he have a general hit list that only allows him one attempt at each? Are there other targets he failed to eliminate? Why didn't he use henchmen in his other murders? Did he use henchmen in his other murders? Or did he have to inspire help first? To me, it feels like a better decision script-wise would have been to take out the earlier assassination attempt on Bruce Wayne and save it for the end after the Arkham conversation. A scene where Batman has to rush to a public function to save Alfred and Aunt Harriet. And then in this scene, he could be forced to solve some final riddle and choose between saving people or learning the truth about his parents, or something. And he could still demonstrate that he's learned what heroism means. Having the attempt on Bruce earlier in the movie feels like it's out of order and creates a weird vacuum between Falcone's death and the end of the film. The Riddler turning himself in is pointless and begs too many questions. How did he know that he'd be taken to Arkham? Why would he be taken to a mental hospital that quickly? I presume law enforcement would be interrogating him for days. This plot device is mostly just a cool-looking set piece, an overused trope that doesn't really serve a function here. Joker doing this in The Dark Knight is cool because it's a misdirect to show Batman that he's in control of the situation. What was Riddler trying to accomplish here? He tells Batman he wanted them to watch the carnage here together in Arkham. It is an island separate from the rest of Gotham. There's no establishing shot before they speak, but the movie does show its location in relation to everything else when the bombs go off. But the idea of it being the only safe place doesn't really track. It's just flooding, not a tidal wave, in a skyscraper-filled city. They could have had a conversation anywhere without him being in custody. Riddler handing himself over to authorities serves zero purpose in the story. Batman doesn't outwit him. He's just strung along trying to play catch-up with the murders in the info dumps, and then suddenly Riddler's in Arkham. He preemptively puts himself in captivity while his final killing spree goes into action. Was this meant to be some kind of a martyr moment where he inspires anarchy and chaos? Whatever the case, it doesn't fit his MO up until this point. He goes from clinical murders and conspiracy uncovering to mass murder. For most of the film, he has at least some sense of warped justice in the form of public accountability, but then suddenly develops a God is judge complex. The movie attempts to frame it like Batman rejecting him somehow triggers this descent into maniacal retribution on a larger scale, but this was already part of his plan. It seems like the writers were attempting a sleight of hand here, hoping that it would serve as acceptable enough motivation for and investment in the final act. As a sequence in the chain of plot events, the Batman-Riddler conversation scene feels like a non sequitur, and for the Riddler himself, basically a dead end. In isolation, however, and as a summary of the themes, I do enjoy it quite a bit, and I think it's a powerful scene that lays bare Bruce's assumptions about himself and his mission. And here's a short side tangent about why I enjoy it. And I say side tangent because it's there almost exclusively to prompt Bruce's character arc, changing how he views himself. It doesn't provide any new information or challenge specifically in regards to how he must now go about defeating Riddler's final plan. My personal reading of the scene is that Riddler definitely knows Batman's identity and doesn't care. Maybe he's willfully naive, being too insane to really connect the dots, but most likely he just doesn't care. He says, "Let's talk about the billionaire with the lying dead daddy, because at least the money makes it go down easy, doesn't it?" Generally, people say "doesn't it" at the end of a statement to reinforce that the person this comment is being directed at has some sort of understanding of its factuality. And all right, this can be a fairly obtuse or just a figure of speech, but then he immediately follows it up with "Bruce," phrased as a question. He then says the name Wayne with a downward statement inflection. This is either a really cheap misdirect by the filmmakers, or he knows who Batman is and just doesn't care. Riddler then says, "He's the only one we didn't get," making it seem like he's referring to a separate person, but immediately follows with, "You and I both know I'm looking at the real you." Yes, again, this could be taken as vague, open-ended statements here, sure, but I think in this context he sees Batman as a separate entity, not a separate person. He doesn't actually want to kill Bruce Wayne, hence why he mailed a bomb instead of sneaking into his home and bashing him over the head. It's probably a reasonable assumption that Bruce Wayne wouldn't check his own mail. He wants to kill what's left of the human side of Bruce Wayne. He wants to kill Bruce's only companion, Alfred, to push him further into the vengeance persona, to bring him to the dark side. I think it's pretty clear that he sees Batman as the true face of whomever is underneath the cowl. I think the intention of this scene is that Riddler is getting revenge on the Wayne legacy by making Bruce a real orphan, like him, and taking away what matters to Bruce, driving him deeper into anger and revenge. One orphan exposing another's privileged perspective, how Bruce has, in the words of Falcone and Batman Begins, never tasted desperate, and thus can never truly fight fire with fire because he's never really been in hell due to his family's station in life. This is a device used frequently in Batman stories where the villain will just sort of disregard Batman's secret identity because it's not important to them. It's almost always more of an issue for Batman himself than for anyone else. Most of Batman's villains see him as a plaything or an oddity, or this incorruptible terror who is like them in some ways but won't join in on the fun. In the scene previous to the Arkham conversation, when Batman and Gordon are looking through Riddler's apartment, Batman says, "I think I'm his last target," meaning that he believes he's about to be unmasked. Except Riddler isn't interested in destroying the symbol of Batman. Riddler is only interested in punishing the weak and privileged aspect of Bruce Wayne's legacy. That's the mismatch in self-image. Bruce doesn't understand that his actions and his attitude, motivated by vengeance, have brought out the worst kind of imitators more than it has inspired the normal people of Gotham. However good the Arkham scene is, though, Riddler knowing Batman's identity or not doesn't affect the reasoning or sense behind him putting himself in Arkham, or why he goes through with the final phase of his plan. He still just goes from trying to expose and punish a corrupt city organization to basically the Penguin at the end of Batman Returns. "The time has come to punish all God's children." Except that was a last desperate act directed at a city that personally rejected him. This was the Riddler's endgame. He blows up retaining walls, presumably killing quite a few people indiscriminately. He then tries to use his henchmen to assassinate the new mayor, who is decidedly uncorrupt. Why? She wasn't part of the renewal project. And I have to go on another brief side tangent about the Bella Real character. One, really subtle naming, fellas. Two, I think the movie was trying to set her up as a big deal, like she's the embodiment of hope and the future, like Harvey Dent. But she has like 2 lines. Bruce has one tepid interaction with her. She's a non-entity in the film. Whatever purpose her character is meant to serve, which seems to be purely symbolic, is extremely lazy to me. Anyway, now all of a sudden it's just Judgment Day and Gotham needs to be flooded in order to kill a bunch of random people. And then trap a bunch of people specifically in the arena so some goons can shoot everyone. Why? Also, why not just bomb the arena? Was he wanting to expose corruption and then induce mass panic and anarchy? Why? Is it just vengeance in the most obtuse sense? Riddler's pathology gets too generically psychotic by the end to really be all that interesting. He just kind of turns into Ra's al Ghul, but without the zealous specificity. Was Riddler hoping that Batman would break him out of Arkham and join him in some kind of criminal enterprise or further crusade? He clearly expected Batman to sympathize, but then what? It's clear they're setting up some kind of partitioned Arkham City no man's land scenario for the sequel, but how could Riddler possibly anticipate or foresee how this would play out? Is he picturing himself as a kingpin or boss in this isolated section of Gotham? Related to that is the tacked-on Joker scene. Why is Riddler upset here? What did he think was going to happen? That Batman would die? His plan never required Batman's death. That the new mayor didn't die? That not enough people died? That Batman inspired hope? All of the above? Even with a flooded city, how was he planning on getting out of Arkham? Did Riddler just really, really want Batman to be a bad guy? It just feels like they wrote the Batman-Riddler conversation really early in the process and then had to shoehorn it somewhere into the film. Riddler could have just as easily been part of the final attack at the arena and then been taken into custody afterwards. I think there was this revelatory exposition dump that did need to happen, but they didn't know how or where to logistically put this conversation into the movie in a way that kept Riddler free for the climax, or didn't disrupt the pacing. It seems they just really wanted a face-to-face confrontation, but couldn't come up with a way to keep the two separated, or an escape plan for the Riddler at the end of the scene, or were just too married to the idea that the bad guy needed to turn himself in, like the Joker, because it's the cool thing to do. I feel like it wants to be a grand orchestrated event, like something the Joker or Ra's al Ghul would do, but it's not. Riddler kills some people, sends Batman some cryptic messages that lead to other cryptic messages, leaks some information to the public, turns himself in, and then tries to recruit Batman while in custody. His final plan is already set in motion, though, so there's nothing really to that moment beyond sending Bruce on a more direct path towards heroism. All of these ideas are serviceable on their own, But there's not enough overlap, and even if there were, they'd still be undone by how the writers just kind of sideline Riddler out of nowhere. In The Dark Knight, Joker specifically forced Batman into a situation that attempted to prove him wrong and hypocritical. Riddler just kind of thinks Batman is on the same mission as him, and that he would enjoy being part of the rest of his plan. Batman basically responds with, "Oh shit, this guy thinks I'm a weirdo. Everyone in this movie thinks I'm a weirdo. Now I gotta do some hero shit." It's not really a puzzle or a moral conundrum that Batman needs to deal with. He never outmaneuvers the Riddler or gets one step ahead. Riddler doesn't even seem particularly interested in trying to do so either. By the end, it's just, "Oh yeah, also, Batman, here's my final act of terror that you never could have guessed because I never hinted at it. It doesn't fit my MO, and it was hidden under the carpet on my floor. Go stop it, I guess." The mystery thriller aspect kind of just farts out. The manipulation or cat and mouse aspect of it goes nowhere. The physical confrontation only continues via Riddler's hired goons. All the Riddler really does is provide a carrot to dangle in front of Batman. The only thing besides Paul Dano's performance that's really noticeable here is how he reflects back to Bruce the misguidedness of his approach by showing that there's not actually a whole lot separating the two. But really, he just gifts Bruce self-awareness. The final part of his plan has nothing to do with teaching the privileged a lesson, specifically Bruce. It's just a tantrum, and a tantrum not really directed at being rejected by Batman, because it was already set in motion before they talked in person. It also goes against the Riddler's most basic character trait, which is giving Batman a problem that he can't solve, proving himself intellectually superior. Regardless of what personal spin you want to put on the character, this one is kind of essential. Like, maybe there are exceptions, but really, Riddler resorting to mass destruction is akin to him knocking over the board game and admitting defeat. Even coming from the perspective of Riddler being there purely to serve up Bruce's character arc and solidify Batman's mission, this realization comes too late in the movie and isn't given proper exploration throughout the rest of the runtime. That's why it's smarter to take the Batman Begins approach and force Bruce into this decision at the beginning, and then show his struggle to make that idealism a reality. Saving it for the end just isn't that interesting because 99.9% of audiences expect that to already be, or very quickly become, one of Batman's predominant character traits. So yeah, that's it. Riddler doesn't get to do anything very flamboyant or complex in his own right. He doesn't get much time to revel in his own perceived genius, which is a lot of the fun of the character. But he also doesn't serve as a very interesting puppet master in bringing about the transformation of Bruce Wayne/Batman. He's just sort of there as a dark parallel, a thematic stand-in, not really much of a living character. He's not realistic enough to be a fully realized person, and not comic booky enough to be fun. The end. El like, el subscribe, ratata. El ratata alada.